out and preach, you realize people are a lot worse off than you. They're struggling, trying to find out what the struggle's about. They don't even know. They just like, there's so many things, so many options they've got right now. Which way should they go? They're trying to find out who they are, what they really want to do in life. They're having to make money as well, having to compromise. And then in the midst of it all, they've got the intelligence to realize the whole thing's futile. We're just producing so that we can consume. The way the economy works is I give Pancha a lump of dough, and I ask him to make some buns with it. So Pancha breaks it into 6 pieces, cooks it in the oven, and comes back with the buns. And I say, that's very good, Pancha. I'll give you a penny each for those buns. So I give Pancha 6p. And then Pancha says, I'm a bit hungry after all that bacon. I wouldn't mind the bun. And I say to Pancha, fine. They're only 6p each. Special offer. Wow, thanks a lot. So you give him the 6p back, and you get your bun, and he keeps 5 for free. So that's the way it works in the economy. You have to be producing more than you're consuming, then everyone's okay. Prabhupada's lessons were always practical and universal. Srila Prabhupada's books, for example, were not mere theory, but were practical and full of realized knowledge. And Prabhupada practiced what he preached. His entire life was exemplary. He had been in family life, and even then he had vigorously preached by starting his Bhakti Godhead magazine. In poverty and obscurity, he had struggled to start a spiritual movement, and by the grace of Krishna and his spiritual master, he had become successful. He had always shown by his human-like attempts at his willingness to bravely take on austerity and face danger. He had shown exemplary spiritual life for all to try and follow. He had gone alone in an old age to a foreign country and had chanted Hare Krishna in a park in New York City, attracting the young men and women of America. Therefore, everyone should take his example and try to serve Krishna despite the immediate impediments. So I'll be coming all back to you when you're 70. Just checking that you're taking that seriously. 8 years to go for some of us, and then you have to head off to America and start a center. It'll be a bit easier though, because there'll already be devotees there. You should go to the North Pole, right? Preach to the Eskimos. Do igloo to igloo. Do they still live in igloos? No. I think what happened was I saw a program on it. They'd lived in igloos like for thousands of years, and just lived off fish. And then one day the Americans came over and they destroyed the entire culture in one wave of Coca-Cola and films. So 20 years later, nobody knew how to make an Eskimo. Everyone was drinking Coca-Cola, and all the teeth were falling out as well. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sometimes the thought may come into your mind, well, why am I one of the only ones that have taken up Krishna consciousness? But you could look at it like this. If somebody had won £100 million on the Euro lottery, because it's very rare that you win the Euro lottery, then he wouldn't be thinking, why did I have to win it? Why not a lot of people? He'd be okay, wouldn't he? Nama Adyaya Bijaya. Nama Adyaya Bijaya Jnana Vijnana Murtaye Jnana Vijnana Murtaye Pranendriya Mano Buddhi Pranendriya Mano Buddhi Vikare Vyaktim Yushe Vikare Vyaktim Tiyushe Iyushe Nama Adyaya Bijaya Jnana Vijnana Mutaye Anandriya Manobuddhi Vikare Vyaktam Iyushe Nama Adyaya Bijaya Jnana Vijnana Mutaye Anandriya Manobuddhi Vikare Vyaktam Iyushe Naitantani Vijaya Jnana Vijnana Mutaye Anandriya Manobuddhi Virakre Vyaktam Uyase Nama Jaya Vijaya Nama Hidana Mutaye Manobuddhi Vikare Vyaktam Iyushe. Any of the ladies want to try? Nama Jaya Vijaya Mutaye Anandriya Manobuddhi Vikare Vyaktam Iyushe. Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances. Ajaya, unto the original living creature. Vijaya, the seed of the cosmic manifestation. Jnana, of knowledge. Vijnana, and of practical application. Murtaye, unto the deity or form. Prana, of the life air. Indriya, of the senses. Mana, of the mind. Buddhi, of the intelligence. Vikarai, by transformations. Vyaktim, manifestation. Iyushe, who has obtained. Translation, I offer my obeisances to the original personality within this universe, Lord Brahma, who is cognizant and who can apply his mind and realized intelligence in creating this cosmic manifestation. It is because of his activities that everything within the universe is visible. He is therefore the cause of all manifestations. Responsibly, please. I offer my obeisances to the original personality within this universe, Lord Brahma, who is cognizant and who can apply his mind and realized intelligence in creating the cosmic manifestation. It is because of his activities that everything within the universe is visible. He is therefore the cause of all manifestations. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Vedanta Sutra begins by declaring that the Absolute Person is the original source of all creation. Jadman Yajayatan Veratashachatatesh Chatesviga Swara Tene Brahma Heda Adhikavya Mansalya Tejo Varimidamita Munyo Yatrajasagamisha Damna Svena Sada Narastikukam Sachamparam Dimahi. That's the very first verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. One might ask whether Lord Brahma is the Supreme Absolute Person. No, the Supreme Absolute Person is Krishna. Brahma receives his mind, intelligence, materials, and everything else from Krishna, and then he becomes the secondary creator, the engineer of this universe. In this regard, we may note that the creation does not take place accidentally because of the explosion of a chunk. Such nonsensical theories are not accepted by Vedic students. The first created being is Brahma, who is endowed with perfect knowledge and intelligence by the Lord. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Te ne Brahma Hrida Yadi Kavyamayan Surya. Although Brahma is the first created being, he is not independent, for he receives help from the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his heart. There is no one but Brahma at the time of creation, and therefore he receives intelligence directly from the Lord through the heart. This has been discussed in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Brahma is described in this verse as the original cause of the cosmic manifestation, and this applies to his position in the material world. There are many, many such controllers, all of whom are created by the Supreme Lord Vishnu. This is illustrated by an incident described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. When the Brahma of this particular universe was invited by Krishna to Dwarka, he thought that he was the only Brahma. Therefore, when Krishna inquired from his servant which Brahma was at the door to visit, Lord Brahma was surprised. He replied that, of course, Lord Brahma, the father of the four Kumaras, was waiting at the door. Later, Lord Brahma asked why he had inquired which Brahma had come. He was then informed that there are millions of other Brahmas because there are millions of universes. Krishna then called all the Brahmas who immediately came to visit him. The Chaturmukha Brahma, the four-headed Brahma of this universe, thought himself a very insignificant creature in the presence of so many Brahmas with so many heads. Thus, although there is a Brahma who is the engineer of each universe, Krishna is the original source of all of them. Om Agyanatimiranda Shaganandjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhattarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhyevacha paditanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So Hiranyakashipu thinks that Lord Brahma is the Supreme Person. So if he thinks Lord Brahma is the Supreme Person, who does he think Vishnu is? Because he's very upset with Vishnu for killing Hiranyaksha, and eventually he'll want to try and kill him. So that must happen in the next 5 years, doesn't it? Because he kills him before Prahlad. So he was already miffed before he started doing the austerities. I think, really, yeah? Okay. Okay, so he was definitely miffed with Vishnu for killing Hiranyaksha, and then he's saying to Lord Brahma, you're the Supreme Person. So how is it possible that somebody could find themselves thinking that Lord Brahma is God and Vishnu isn't God?
Prabhupada describes that worship, in the mode of ignorance, people worship someone who will give them a particular. So he describes someone worshipping Hitler because it was fulfilling his black market deals, etc.
Yeah.
So for your material desires, then you're able to see anyone as God.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Obviously, Lord Brahma's got a lot more going from them than Adolf Hitler. So that's interesting. So, Hiranyakashipu is quite powerful. He has managed to bring the whole universe into danger. So that's pretty powerful, because you couldn't do that with a nuclear bomb. Even if you had a load of nuclear bombs and you dropped them all on themselves in space, it wouldn't make any difference to a planet around the corner. They wouldn't even know it was happening. So he must have been pretty powerful. Anyway, so he's thinking Lord Brahma is God. And then at the same time, he's thinking he wants to oust him from his position. So underlying everything is this kind of Mayavadi conception that I can push other people out of their posts and I can take over. Like the Mayavadi thinks I can become God. So Vedanta Sutra begins by declaring that the absolute person is Janmajayata, which means that he's the source of everything. So it isn't actually possible to understand that if you think about it. How is it possible to understand that Krishna has always existed? It's really hard to understand that, isn't it? And not just Krishna, but everything, the cows, the grass, the yellow dhoti, the flute, the marks on his feet, everything was just always there, Anyone, any help with that? How do we understand that Krishna was always there? Obviously, to some degree, we've kind of accepted that, and here we are, chopping spuds. But how did we come to that conclusion? How did we accept that conclusion that Krishna was just always there? The scientists say the chunk was always there, and we say that Krishna was always there. Why is it more plausible that it's Krishna and not? Because a chunk is easy to get. It's easy to get your head around, isn't it? Just a chunk, nobody knew where it came from. It was just hanging around the corner of the universe somewhere. You can kind of, it was a chunk. It's like if you find a chunk in the corner of the temple room, who left this chunk here? But if it's a beautiful deity of Krishna, you'd be like, well, who left this here? Well, Prabhupada said if you don't accept Krishna as God, any other argument is meaningless. So it's meaningless, isn't it? A chunk was just always here. Well, who put it there? No, it was just kind of hanging around, really. It's like so there's no meaning anymore. Then what's the point in being a good guy or trying to be honest or whatever? Everything's just meaningless. At the end of the year, we used to do a Krishnamist review, and we would have these different characters that we would do skits with. And one of them was the family called the Chansas. And Mr. and Mrs. Chansa were living on the principle that everything was by accident and chaotic. So Mr. Chansa comes back and he says, what are we having tonight for dinner? And she says, well, I put a load of seaweed in the washing machine, 2 buckets of seawater, half a cup of mud, and a load of grass. And I've got it on a spin now. So by about 5 this evening, we should be having rhubarb crumble and custard. And he goes, wow, sounds delicious, darling, can't wait. So that's how if everything's by chance, then you don't try to organize anything. It's like Prabhupada would say, well, if it's by chance, why are you studying for a PhD? Let your PhD come by chance. So it's contradictory. They want to say that this is the kind of underlying reality behind everything, but at the same time, we have this alternative reality that we exist in relatively, because otherwise we just can't function, But it's not absolute, is it? Absolute means whatever the underlying reality is, I'm living my life in accord with that, then it's absolute. So isn't that amazing that we're trying to align now with the absolute principle of our existence, rather than just some cheap, meaningless, relative thing that what everyone else is doing, it's hard to just go along with that, Everyone else is wearing bell bottoms, so therefore I'll have to wear them as well. That's the goal of life. Anyway, there we have it. Hiranyakashipu is definitely confused about how the universe is set up. And that's the nature of the material energy, is that it confuses and puzzles. If you have the wrong attitude, then you become more confused and more puzzled, more bewildered. So Prabhupada's making it very clear that Brahma is the secondary creator, and it is not an accidental because of an explosion of a chunk. Does everyone know that drama that they do, like a little skit in Radio Ram, Blow Up Constructions? So they go along and they go, "Hey folks, welcome to Blow It Up Constructions. And we just take glass, bricks, pieces of wood, and the magic ingredient, TNT. And you tell us what the house is that you want, 5-bedroomed, a toilet and ensuite bedrooms. And we just blow your house into existence. It worked for the universe and it can work for your house. Blow It Up Constructions. And if it's not the house you want, don't worry, we'll just keep blowing it up until it is." So it's not an accidental chunk blowing up. Nonsensical theories are not accepted by Vedic students. So it just suits them, you see, because the civilization is demoniac and they don't really want to have a god, they'll accept any old theory, whatever it takes, to just substantiate their approach to life, that they don't have to be accountable, and they can just go around and exploit everything like mad. And you can't do that if there's a God. So it's interesting that Hiranyakashipu was aware that there was some system and he had to observe tapasya to achieve success. But still, he was bewildered, even though he knew so well how things were set up, and he managed to invoke the presence of Brahma. He could have said to Lord Brahma, "Look, I'm thinking of taking over here and being God. What do you think? I mean, you've created everything. Are you actually the supreme?" Because there's one story where a sage does approach Lord Brahma to find out whether he's the supreme. Bhrigu, and he thinks, well, the way I'll find out is I'll just insult them all. So he insults Lord Brahma and he gets angry. He insults Lord Shiva, he gets angry. Then he insults Lord Vishnu and kicks him on the chest. And Lord Vishnu says, "Oh, I'm very, very sorry. I hope I didn't hurt your foot." And then he realizes, okay, that's the supreme person, you know. So Bhrigu Muni was a little more intelligent than Hiranyakashipu. Although the goddess Lakshmi was annoyed with Bhrigu for doing that. And so she cursed all the Brahmins that they'll be poor. Because Bhrigu was a Brahmin, you see. So that's why the Brahmins are always got holes in their socks. If you haven't got a hole in your sock, you're not a bona fide Brahmin. So there you go. Tene Brahma Hrida Adhikavye. So because Brahma was in touch with the Lord in his heart, he was able to create. Imagine that you're just born in darkness. You wake up and you don't know what's going on. And you don't know what anything looks like to create it. And then Krishna comes, he shows him what a tree looks like and everything else. And then Lord Brahma can take the clay and mimic spiritual forms using material ingredients. So we have potatoes that are made out of earth, but a spiritual potato isn't made out of earth. It's pure consciousness, Chintamani. So what we're cutting is a clay imitation of what a real potato looks like. And we're eating that. And we're getting some taste, but our taste is only an imitation of the real taste. Raso vayapsakonteya. I am the taste, the original taste. So somebody may have a material desire for a potato, and so they approach Krishna and say, "Could I have a bag of chips?" And Krishna can give them the bag of chips, but Krishna knows that if he had a bag of chips in the spiritual world, then he would be really satisfied. So he'll satisfy your material desires, your cheap material desires if you want, but Krishna would be more pleased if you were to go deeper and ask for a spiritual potato instead. And the nature of eating chips in the spiritual world, you don't have to actually put them in your mouth. You can taste them just by looking at them. Or so I've been told anyway. There is no one but Brahma at the time of creation. So when Brahma was first born, 2 demons appeared, didn't they? Ketava. Yeah, and they were cheating, weren't they? And he had to sort them out. So right from the word go, Lord Brahma had his work cut out for him. It's basically like saying to the living entity, the jiva, the topmost jiva, they say the jiva that's followed the Varnashram perfectly for 100 lifetimes can take birth as Lord Brahma in a universe. And if there's no one who's done it, then Krishna takes on the post. And then basically he's in charge of a prison, and the inmates are in different stages of reformation. Some of them in straitjackets in the bodies of microbes, and some of them have a little bit more freedom, and some of them have nice prisons where they get a good view and they get chocolate cake on Sunday, and they think they're doing really well, but they're all in prison, and Lord Brahma is overseeing it and trying to reform them, or allow because that's the whole point of the material universe, why he creates it in the first place. So he receives the intelligence and all the materials to create the universe. And then Prabhu goes on to refer to an incident where Lord Brahma went. It said that when Lord Brahma went and realized he wasn't the only Lord Brahma, Krishna summoned all the other Lord Brahmas. When they all bowed their heads, they all thought they were on their own with Krishna. They didn't know that all the other Lord Brahmas were there. So each Lord Brahma thought he was there on his own. But when they bowed their heads, the Lord Brahma of our universe had all their helmets hitting the ground at the same time, and it was a tremendous noise, a clash. There's millions and millions of helmets, and some of the Lord Brahmas had millions of helmets themselves. So that must have been like billions and billions, you know. So how do you have a million heads? You're going to be really busy on Sunday shaving up, huh? So anyway, some things are just beyond our ability to get our head round. Get the one head round. Get your head round a million heads. And so he uses that, Srila Prabhupada uses that example to show how our Lord Brahma is just one amongst many. And that our Lord Brahma is one of the, he is the most insignificant Lord Brahma of all of them. He only has 4 heads. Most of them have got much more than 4 heads. Any questions or comments? Shishikolitai Mai Poshashi ki jai, Shitosinath Maharaj ki jai, Shri Giridhari Lal ki jai, Shri Nrsimha Bhagavan ki jai. Yes, Panchnath.
I always feel like we hear our Lord Brahma is the most insignificant.
Yeah.
But then doesn't that make him significant? Like surely if he just was on the low end of things. But the fact that he is, I don't know, this is the way my mind works. I always feel that's too coincidental or something.
Well, Srila Prabhupada, there was one disciple went to Srila Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, I'm your most fallen disciple. He was trying to get some mileage out of being the most fallen. And Prabhupada said, you are the most nothing. So you can't be significantly insignificant. And there may be Lord Brahmas that are more humble, even though they're more significant. Because your ability to appreciate how insignificant you are isn't based upon how meager your status is. Otherwise, all the most humble people in the world would be the smallest ones. But it's not. In fact, the police warn you that the guy to watch out for that's going to cause the trouble is the little guy with the moustache. Because he's the one who's trying to show himself. He's got like an ego problem. He's got a chip on his shoulder. So just because you're the most insignificant doesn't necessarily mean that you're the most humble. Although it could definitely help. It's funny how the false ego works. If you take the false ego, it's born from the mode of ignorance, the false ego. Lord Shiva is in charge of it. And it's funny if you take it to its extreme, you know, your false ego is like, who does he think he is? talking to me like that. You know, I deserve a bit more respect, a bit more recognition. And it starts off like that, a bit more, well, actually a bit more again. Yeah, and give me a bit more. In fact, I tell you what, just start worshiping me, okay? So the false ego is actually, who is God? Who is this God guy anyway, you know? I can take over. I can do a much better job than him. And there's a film like that where a guy gets to be God for a day and he makes such a mess of things, you know? Not an easy job being God because you got to look after everybody. And you could say, oh, well, the type of God I believe in, if you don't get it right, you get damned to the lake of eternal fire for eternity. But if God is all cognizant and everyone is parts and parcel, how could you be carefree, enjoying yourself, knowing that the majority of people you've created are writhing around in the lake of fire? Doesn't make sense, does it? And why would you do that? If you're all knowing, why would you create a potato that's going to explode? If you knew already that it was going to explode, then you wouldn't create it, right? Every potato, every soul is created perfectly with the potential of being a chip rather than having a chip on its shoulder. So, everything is perfect. If something has to stay in a suffering condition forever, isn't that imperfect? It's perfect because potentially everyone will achieve this stage of perfection. Prabhupada says everyone eventually will go back, but by that time there'll be fresh ones that will come into the material world, you know. So there'll always be someone in the prison house, but it won't be the same people in the prison house forever. Just thought I'd let you know that to cheer you up in case you're feeling a bit down. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Perpetually isn't forever, but it's certainly a long time. But then, you know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, all the demons have attained your lotus feet, and Bhaktivinoda stays in worldly existence. So if you are demoniac and you keep getting cast down, then eventually you run into Krishna, and then you're okay. But it's a much slower way of doing it. That's the long road home. You can go on the mode of ignorance road, the fruitive road, or the mode of goodness road. Mode of goodness road is the quickest one, smoothest one.
You can't go back to Krishna until you have that pure love.
Well, you may go to Vaikuntha, where you have awe and reverence.
Can I ask you as well?
You still have to have pure love. Yeah. In fact, Guru Maharaj was just saying that recently. He says nobody can go back to Godhead, even to Vaikuntha, unless they have prema. And then you may have received prema, but now you have to cultivate it. You have to avoid activities which will overshadow your prema, and you have to engage in activities which will cultivate your prema. We sing every morning to Srila Prabhupada, don't we? That you've bestowed upon us this prema, and you're the friend of the poor, the Lord and Master of the devotees. So birth after birth. So we're in the process now of receiving that. And attachment to his lotus feet. What is it? My only desire is to hear the words emanating from his lotus mouth, which I was thinking this morning, which really means a very strong attachment to reading Srila Prabhupada's books. They're the words that are emanating from his lotus mouth. His books are the highest authority, then come his letters, then come his conversations, but everything is governed by Shastra. Both Sadhu and Guru, there's Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, but everything is governed by Shastra, both the Guru and the Sadhu, our only Guru and Sadhu. in accord with how much they are aligned with the Shastra. So the demons are perpetually cast into demoniac species of life, and you know that pastime where they're churning the ocean? There's one bit where Lord Shiva starts drinking the poison, and then the poison is given to scorpions and wasps and nasty things like that, and snakes. There's one jellyfish. When it stings you, the pain is so painful. They say that sailors used to put their hand into fire to relieve the pain. So these are like demoniac, living entities, and they cause so much pain. And then they have to hang around in those species for a long, long time. So that's why demoniac activity is best to be avoided. They say this world is unreal, with no foundation and no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and has no other cause than lust. Dambo, Darpo, Bhimanas, Cha, Krodam, Purusham, Eva, Cha. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature. So we can look at ourselves and think, am I proud? Am I harsh? Am I ignorant? Okay, I need to get rid of that. This could be a potential problem for me. Anatta Nivritti, getting free from unwanted things in the heart. But before you can get free from unwanted things in the heart, they have to come up in the heart so that you can reject them. So every day you'll get these things coming up in your heart saying, do you really not want me? And you have to say, yep, I really don't want you. Or you could say, well, I guess you weren't that bad. You've been my friend for millions of lifetimes. So maybe we can find a little place for you somewhere. You could say, well, why didn't Maharaj Pariksit just kill Kali? He could have just killed him, and then there wouldn't be any all this bad stuff going on, But Kali, his service is to facilitate souls that didn't make it back in the past yuga, that have got some nasty desires, and he facilitates them. And Krishna allows that because out of his love, he doesn't want to force us. So Kali says to Pariksit Maharaj, he goes, well, where can I reside? And Pariksit Maharaj says, anywhere there's gold. And because in Kali Yuga, you can't even get gold. So basically, wherever there's money. So all you have to do, if you want to see illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling, you just drop a heap of money, like £1 million in the high street in Les Mahego, and then just watch what happens. And you'll see that the result will be Kali will become attracted, and there'll be a lot of illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling going on. That's how you invoke the presence of Kali. Just put a lot of money. Just give somebody a lot of money, and away they go. Immediately, Kali will be tapping him on the shoulder. Hey, I've got some great ideas what you can spend this on. They say whatever a poor man thinks of doing, and a rich man does. So you're better off being poor in Kali Yuga, because at least you've not got the money to do it. Any other questions or comments? It's basic stuff, isn't it? It's much more explicit, though. When I was a kid, we used to go to Sunday school, and we knew that, well, actually, we were a bit afraid. I think most of us were a bit afraid of God, whether he was going to set a bush on fire or start an earthquake on the way back home or fire a meteorite at you from the heavens. And Jesus seemed nice. He seemed friendly. And he was going to act as the mediator because he was on good terms with God. So as long as you were okay with Jesus, everything was fine. But this is much more explicit. We have so much more. I think it would be nice to get the light of the Bhagavad out, amongst the students. The original, we did a copy. I asked for it to get printed, and they did a print, but the print was this size, and it was soft back, and the pictures had been chopped and cropped, But the original one is like a hardback book, about this long, and a bit squarer, full of beautiful pictures. And I used to give them out to people, and it was so powerful, so amazing. Just very simple statement. An unchanged woman is like a thunderbolt going from cloud to cloud. And that was it. A couple of clouds, a thunderbolt, and that's like, wow. And it's the same with, this as well. It's, the Lord Brahma, the four-headed creator, is being instructed by the Lord in his heart to create the universe. Because I think people have come to the conclusion that if it's not a chunk, then whatever it is must be really, really far out. And how could you think up a story like that? Coming out of a flower, a lotus growing from the navel, and then a creator with four heads being inspired from within the heart. Perhaps also the challenge now is, because we've done a lot of book distribution, and there's one nice devotee in Wales, back to Rupa, and he's seeing how we can get through with the media, with the technology, doing vlogs and podcasts. And this seems to be the new thing now. People just want to have a quick 2 or 3 minute chunk of knowledge, a little story, a little aphorism, and then they go off and they can meditate on that affirmation for the day, I thought the program last night was really nice in the university. It was good.
So where would you see the direction of preaching, sort of going forward the next 10 years?
How we should... I think we can look toward other devotees that are doing things. You see this project in Wales where they're building this temple, and they've got all these different rooms. And that's kind of really trendy as well. It's in the city centre. Let's go and chill out around the Hare Krishna temple and get some nice food and get into some meditation. When we first started doing books in Scotland, I remember, we were asking people for donations. We had a can, we were shaking the can. And they'd spin around sometimes and say, "What's it for?" I would say, "Oh, we're trying to help suffering people." Something vague like that, But if you just said, "We're trying to reduce stress," they'd have said, "Nah, I'm saving my money for starving kids in Africa or something," Because that was like they didn't see stress as a problem. If you say to people now, "This is a book on how to reduce stress," everyone stops, because everyone knows someone that's committed suicide. So it's become much more relevant now, what we have, Vegetarianism was weird. Now vegetarianism is getting left behind by veganism. If you're against the animal cruelty, why are you taking milk? That's another thing. Well, you have to get these tablets from the doctor to lower your blood pressure. Yeah, well, the stress. I was just thinking actually about Chaitanya Maharaj. You have a stroke when you're under a lot of duress. When you've really pushed yourself, and out of anxiety to spread the mission and go. I think he's got like 50,000 disciples now, or he's got more, yeah. So we maybe have a utopian idea that spiritual life means that I'll be free of stress, in the sense that I wouldn't have to worry about things. But you get free from material stress, but then you take on spiritual anxiety, and you're worried about people, and you're worried that things are going to be kept up to the proper standard, and things are punctual, things are clean, the standard's not being lowered. And that's a challenge when you're having people staying in a temple that aren't really interested in practicing Krishna consciousness themselves. And we're only here to provide volunteering. If the volunteers want to find out more about Krishna consciousness and join the Bhakti program, then we don't have that. They have to go to the mana. That's all we can facilitate, at least right now anyway, unless we get someone that wants to run the ladies' ashram, and then we can have a Bhakti course, but we don't have that. So this is all we have. This is all we can facilitate at the present moment.
But how to distinguish between taking on spiritual anxiety and stress, which seems to be a good thing, compared to just dealing with material stress, because it's a way of our conditioning, etc.
Well, if it's material stress, then there was one devotee, and his party piece was when he got upset with people. He was a temple commander, and if he got upset with people, he used to get them and throw them down the stairs. I don't think you can get away with that now. This was like in the good old days. And so that's not spiritual anxiety. That's material, you know. That degrades to just being angry, and then it's like manifestation of the mode of ignorance, you know. It's not good for you, it's not good for him. And I thought Bhakti Ragamaj made a fantastic point. He just said it casually. He says, put your hands up if you're interested in psychology. And one or two in Om Sri Om put their hands up, and he goes, well, I think everyone should be really, because we're all having to deal with psychology. It all involves us, you know. So psychology is learning how to navigate through the negative effects of how the mind functions, and learning how to replace it with positive actions, positive activities, learning about how your mind works, what triggers you, how to avoid being triggered, how to insulate yourself against states of mind that become counterproductive. So you have to become quite adept at learning how to deal with your mind, you know. Then once you've done that, then you can start dealing with other people's minds. But it's premature to start worrying about other people's minds while your own is still in disorder. If you can't function smoothly without some major breakdown, then you need to start dealing with yourself first. And then you can start to think about helping other people, you know. It's like if the doctor comes in and they're all lying there in the ward, you know, and the doctor comes in and his head's hanging off. He's just on by a sinew, you know, and he's saying, okay, what seems to be the problem? The doctor, I think your head's going to fall off. So the doctor has to sort himself out first, and then he can help others, you know. So what's interesting about spiritual is like fire. You can put a rod in the fire, and eventually the rod becomes spiritualized, but the rod doesn't become spiritual. It only is spiritualized as long as it stays in contact with the fire. So the fire for us is the holy name, and we need to have the iron in the coal for at least 2 hours, and then we get a glow. So we stop chanting, but the rest of the day we're still glowing from being spiritualized by the holy name, and then we can engage in other spiritual activities. We can set fire to things and do other kinds of work. But if the iron rod isn't in the coal long enough, then all day you're just banging things with this iron rod. And because it's not spiritualized, then things don't go on fire. You're just bopping things, you know, but it's all mundane. So we have to spiritualize. And it's not that if you've had the rod in the fire for 15 years, and then you take it out and think, well, it should be good for the next 15 years, it'll cool down just the same as it would if it was only in for 2 hours. It still cools down the same. So the rod has to stay in the fire every day, daily, 2 hours, and in between other things as well, which will help keep it spiritual, keep spiritualizing it. And then eventually it does come to the point where you become spontaneous, where you're spontaneously spiritualized all the time. And then the body is no longer considered material. That's why spiritual master's body is kept in, or the sannyasi's body is put into salt. It's not burnt or just buried because it's considered now that it's spiritual. And Srila Prabhupada displayed at times indications that his body wasn't material, that it was so spiritualized. Like when he was walking with the devotees, and the devotee looked back, and there was 3 of them. There was 4 of them, including Prabhupada, and there was 3 trails of footsteps on the sand, and there was no indentation, and they noticed it on the grass as well. I think it was by the manor they were walking, and they looked around, and Prabhupada hadn't left any footprints on the grass. Everyone else had left footprints on the grass, but he hadn't, So that's Nityasiddha, someone that's never touched by the material energy. And then the question could be asked, is Srila Prabhupada's form eternal? Is that form the form that he always has when he appears? Is that the form that he has in Chaitanya Leela? Because there's your Siddha form, that's with Krishna, and then there's your Sadhaka form, and that's with Lord Chaitanya, like Raghunath Das, that's his Sadhaka form. But his Siddha form is Rati Manjari with Krishna. Okay, I'll finish there. Iskon Guru in the key, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaura Premnandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to